This is part 32. In the last part we dealt with what do you mean by wrongful confinement as defined by section 340, and then wrongful restraint, which is defined as per section 339 of the Indian Penal Code is concerned. And then we learned right from section 341 up to section 348 are the sections which deal with punishment. Now we start with the next topic, and in order to understand this we start with simple illustration from day-to-day life, and that is A picked up a stone in his hand. There is a gesture and he tells Mr. B that I am going to throw this stone into your direction. So gesture is accompanied by words, but without throwing that stone, Mr. A keeps it back or throws it on the ground instead of throwing it into direction of Mr. B. What is liability of Mr. A? Now, if you have got reference to the stages regarding commission of an offence with which you are dealt, you will spontaneously react, sir, he is not liable for the simple reason he had intention. There was a preparation, but he had not crossed the stage of preparation, and question of liability doesn't arise. But can one person behave in such a manner? Whether there should be restriction with respect to such behavior or not, and what is the legal duty that is cast? For that now, the answer to this problem, he is liable and he has committed the offence of assault, which is defined by section 351 of the Indian Penal Code. Now, if we start going through section 351 of the Indian Penal Code, which defines the offence of assault, it says, whoever makes any gesture or any preparation, intending or knowing it to be likely that such gesture or preparation will cause any person present to apprehend that he who makes such gesture or preparation is about to use criminal force, is said to that person is said to commit an assault. And the explanation to the section says, mere words do not amount to an assault, but the words which a person uses may give to his gesture or preparation such a meaning as may make those gesture or preparation amount to an assault. So his liability for the offence of assault as defined by section 351 of the Indian Penal Code. But then as you start reading section 351 of the Indian Penal Code, you will come to know that such is about to use criminal force. And then for the purpose of understanding this section, namely section 351 of the Indian Penal Code, you must know what do you mean by criminal force. And then the criminal force is defined, the offence of criminal force is defined as far as section 350 of the Indian Penal Code is concerned, which says, whoever intentionally uses force to any person without that person's consent in order to the committing of any offence, or intending by the use of such force to cause, or knowing it to be likely that by the use of such force he will cause injury, fear or annoyance to the person to whom the force is used, is said to use criminal force. So this is, to understand the offence of assault, which is defined by section 351 of the Indian Penal Code, we must know the offence of criminal force, which is defined by section 350 of the Indian Penal Code. But then as you start reading section 350, which defines the offence of criminal force, the wording will immediately suggest you whoever intentionally uses force to any person. And then what do you mean by force, or when it can be said that a force has been used by one person with respect to another person, is defined as far as section 359 of the Indian Penal Code is concerned. And 349, which defines the offence of force, mind well, is not at all an offence. When it can be said that one person has used force with respect to another person is defined by section 349. But then force becomes an offense when it amounts to criminal force, when it is one of the intents with which we shall be dealing. But to understand criminal force, first of all, it is necessary for you to know the what do you mean by force as it is defined by section 349. Now, as you read I personally feel the most lengthy section, and hence to understand this section you have to read the section. Yes, you have to as usual analyze the section. Yes, you have to carry out dissection of the section. Yes, you have to find out ingredients of the section, and along with you to read no illustrations are given as after section 349, but the illustrations are given as per section after section 350, and the illustrations which are given after section 351 must be read by you for the purpose of knowing the provisions, namely what do you mean by force, what do you mean by criminal force, and what do you mean by assault. Right from section 352 up to section 358 are the sections which deal with punishment. Now, so these are the sections which deal with punishment, no doubt about it. And hence now, during the course of time, as I have told you, this is what is assault? Once you understand assault now, when we will deal with the right of private defense of the body, and there if you remember, I have made a mention of it in the past that we shall be dealing with general exceptions right from section 76 up to 106 of the Indian Penal Code, and out of which section 100 of the Indian Penal Code makes mention as to when the right of private defense of the body extends to the causing of death. And when you start reading section 100 of the Indian Penal Code or understanding section 100 of the Indian Penal Code, and this is not, we are not working out details as far as section 100 of the Indian Penal Code is concerned, but then this section, when the right of private defense of the body extends to the causing of death, it says it extends to the causing of death such an assault as may reasonably cause the apprehension that death will otherwise be the consequence of such assault. Such an assault as may reasonably cause the apprehension that grievous hurt will otherwise be the consequence of such assault. An assault with the intention of committing rape, an assault with the intention of gratifying unnatural lust, an assault with the intention of kidnapping or abducting, and lastly it says an assault with the intention of wrongfully confining a person under circumstances which may reasonably cause him to apprehend that he will be unable to have recourse to the public authorities for his release, the right of private defense of the body extends to the causing of death. So this can be understood by you provided you know what do you mean by assault. And hence now what we have started, the time for us to first of all we start discussing as to what do you mean by force. To have few illustrations from day-to-day life instead of reading the illustrations which are given, and you can have your own illustrations. Once you know the ingredients of the section, by all means it is possible for you to know by illustrations you can try to understand by taking into consideration various illustrations from day-to-day life. Yes, and hence now imagine a situation where you are standing, Mr. A is standing in the class. He is in the class under the ceiling fan, and whatever he is imagine that he is delivering lecture in the class. All of a sudden, somebody, when he is standing, he stands still. Somebody has noticed that the fan is about to fall on his head. The person who is sitting on the bench jumps and has pushed Mr. A. This is causing of motion. Yes, correct. If it happens that Mr. A is proceeding into the direction of the fan, and somebody has noticed that the fan is about to fall, so he jumps and stands in front of Mr. A, so there is cessation of motion. He doesn't allow him to proceed and come under the fan. Or when he is he is in motion, Mr. A is in motion who is under the fan, somebody jumps and then has dashed Mr. A in such a manner whereby there is change of motion. Now what can be said? One who has on whose part there is causing of motion or cessation of motion or change of motion has used a force. but then merely using force. Yes, he has used a force, no doubt about it. But simply because of the fact that one person has used force with respect to another person, it cannot be said that he has. It can be said that he has used a force, but force is not at all an offense. What do you mean by force, or when it can be said that one person has used force with respect to another person is merely defined as far as section 349 is concerned? Or think of a situation where somebody is learning bicycle. He is on two-wheeler bicycle and he is trying to balance himself. All of a sudden it so happen he shouts, and the one who is by his side has caught hold of the handle in such a manner so he doesn't allow him to fall. By catching hold of the handle, there is a cessation of motion with respect to the rider of the bicycle, which has resulted into what? He has used a force. But this, I mean, though he has used a force, it cannot be said that he is liable, because when the person is liable only when if he fails in his duty, and here when he commits an offense, and here in this case he has used a force, but he has not at all committed any offense, though the question of liability doesn't arise. Or somebody is learning to ride a horse, and now he starts riding the horse. In the beginning, yes, but then afterwards horse started galloping in such a manner so that it's impossible for the rider or who is learning how to ride the horse to control the horse, and he shouts for help, and somebody comes in from who is by the side or in front of him and has caught hold of the horse in such a manner that, I mean, horse has stopped ultimately, which has resulted into cessation with respect to the rider, stopping of the motion as far as the rider is concerned. All these situations indicate that the force has been used. But then only what we say, he has used a force. The question of liability doesn't arise, because liability will start only when force will amount to criminal force. And hence now, if we start reading section 349, it says a person is said to use force to another. A person is said to use force to another if he causes motion, or change of motion, or cessation of motion to that other. So if he has caused motion or change of motion or cessation of motion to that other, I hope you will correlate with the illustration that I have told you, and simultaneously start reading the illustrations which are given in the book, and then have your own illustrations from the point of view of having clarity as far as the understanding of this topic is concerned. This is first part. A person is said to use force to another if he causes motion, change of motion, or cessation of motion to that other, or if he causes to any substance such motion, or change of motion, or cessation of motion as brings that substance into contact with any part of that other's body, or with anything which that other is wearing or carrying, or with anything so situated that such contact affects the other's sense of feeling. So this is now second ingredient says, if he causes to any substance such a motion, or change of motion, or cessation of motion as brings that substance into contact with any part of that other's body, or with that other is wearing or carrying, or with anything so situated that such contact affects the other's sense of feeling, provided that the person causing the motion, or change of motion, or cessation of motion causes that motion, or change of motion, or cessation of motion in one of the three ways hereinafter described. So this causing of motion, change of motion, or cessation of motion, how it should take place? One, by his own bodily power. by his own bodily power. Secondly, by disposing any substance in such a manner that the motion or change or cessation of motion takes place without any further act on his part or on the part of any other person. Thirdly, by inducing any animal to move, to change its motion or to cease to move. So if the force is this causing of motion, change of motion or cessation of motion takes place first by his own bodily power, two, by disposing any substance in such a manner that the motion, change of motion or cessation of motion takes place without any further act on his part or on the part of any other person. And thirdly, it says by inducing any animal to move, to change its motion or cease to move. Under these circumstances, it can be said that the force is used on the part of an individual. To have few more illustrations, let us, first of all, try to understand, and then simultaneously along with that, let us take into consideration the illustrations, so that first of all try to understand what is criminal force. Now the illustrations which we had dealt in the past, where the force is used but it will not amount to an offense. Why it is not offense? Because force is not an offense. Criminal force is an offense. So we will try to first of all take into consideration as to what do you mean by criminal force. And then if you read section 350, which defines criminal force, which says whoever intentionally uses force to any person. So this is first ingredient, intentionally using force to any person. There must be intentionally using of force to any person. That is one thing. How? Without that person's consent. The person with respect to whom or against the force has been used, it must be without the consent of that person. And what is the purpose? In order to the committing of any offense. So if the force is used with intent to commit an offense, that is one thing, or intending by the use of such force to cause, or knowing it to be likely by the use of such force he will cause injury, fear or annoyance to the person to whom the force is used, is said to use criminal force to that other. So this is the state of the mind with which a force is used. It is used intentionally. Yes, that is one thing. Two, it is used without the consent of the person. Yes, and consent has got reference to what? Consent has got reference to section 90 of the Indian Penal Code, which defines what do you mean by valid consent, or the consent which is intended by the provisions of the Indian Penal Code in the negative form. So that is one thing. Secondly, here if the intention is to commit an offense, if the intention is to cause injury, if the intention is to cause fear, or intention is to cause annoyance to the person to whom the force is used, then it is said to use criminal force. It becomes a criminal force. So as we were discussing, if you remember, distinction between civil trespass and criminal trespass, where we learn if the intention was to commit an offense, if the intention was to intimidate, insult or annoy the person, in as far as section 350 is concerned, if the intention is to commit an offense, or if the intention is to cause injury, fear or annoyance, and this is done with what? If the person who uses the uses the force, what he has done, intending by the use of such force to cause, or knowing it to be likely by the use of such force he will cause injury, fear or annoyance to the person to whom the force is used, is said to use a criminal force. Now, in the illustration where A stands in front of Mr. B, stops in front of Mr. B in order to commit theft with respect to some property which he is having, or with intent that he should compel him to part with the property. Now it is done, or he has pushed him and dashed him in such a manner so that he should fall on the ground, which should result into bodily pain. In other words, his intention was to commit an offence of voluntarily causing hurt defined by section 321 of the Indian Penal Code. So that is, here, if the force is used intentionally without the consent with intent to commit an offence, that will amount to what do you mean by criminal force as it is defined by section 350 of the Indian Penal Code. Or the person who, in the illustration that we had taken in the past, somebody is trying to, he is learning bicycle, how to have balance as far as two-wheeler is concerned, and somebody came from backside and gave such a push to the by holding the carrier in such a manner, so the person who is on the bicycle, the speed has become such a tremendous speed that it causes fear that my bicycle is bound to fall, which will result into maybe fracture also, whatever it might be. This is the fear. So what he has done, causing of a motion to the bicycle has ultimately resulted into causing of motion to the one who is learning the bicycle. And if it is that is with one of the intents, for example, if it is with intent to commit an offence, with intent to cause injury, fear or annoyance to the person, then we say his liability is for the offence of criminal force as defined by section 350 of the Indian Penal Code. Now, the illustrations which are given, as I have told, I have been telling you in the past, illustrations, the reading of the illustration serves purpose. Let us have some exercise. Now, here the first illustration, small a, says A is sitting in a moored boat on a river. The boat is tied with the help of the rope so that it should not drift, it should not be drifted deep into the river, and then Mr. Z is there in the boat. What Mr. A starts? A came there and he starts unfasten the moorings. He started unfastening the moorings in such a manner. This is done with the intention that the boat to drift deep into the stream. Now, if this is done by Mr. A intentionally, without the consent of Mr. Z, and this is done in such a manner that the motion produced without any action on any person's part, A has therefore intentionally used force to Z, and if he has done so without Z's consent in order to the committing of any offence, or intending or knowing it to be likely by the use of such force he will cause injury, fear or annoyance to Mr. Z, A has used a criminal force. Now, if A incites a dog to spring upon Z without Z's consent, now if A intends to cause injury, and it is but natural, when you instigate your dog or when you incite your dog to spring upon Z, what is the intention? The intention is the dog to attack him, and hence if here A intends to cause injury, fear or annoyance to Z, he uses criminal force to him. Now, this by any one of the ways with which you are dead. What are the ways? By your own bodily power, to by disposing of any substance in such a manner that the motion, change of motion or cessation of motion takes place without any further act on the part or on the part of any other person, and thirdly, by inducing any animal to move, to change its motion or cease to move. Now, if Z is riding in a chariot, A lashes Z's horses and thereby causes them to quicken their pace. Here A has caused the change of motion to Z by inducing the animal to change their motion. A has therefore used force to Z, and if A has done this without Z's consent, intending or knowing it to be likely that he may thereby injure, frighten or annoy Z, A has used criminal force to Mr. Z. Now, A intentionally pushes against Z in the street. This is but natural, will constitute liability for the offense of criminal force. A is riding in palanquin. Z is riding in palanquin. A, intending to rob Z, seizes the pole and stops the palanquin. Here A has caused cessation of motion to Z, and he has done this by his own bodily power. A has therefore used force to Z, and as A has acted thus intentionally without Z's consent in order to the commission of an offense, A has used criminal force to Mr. Z. Now, A is taking a bath. Mr. Z is taking a bath. What A does? A pours into the water which he knows to be he pours boiling water into the water with which he is going to take a bath. Here, A intentionally by his own bodily power causes such motion in the boiling water as brings that water into contact with Z or with other water so situated that such contact must affect Z's sense of feeling. A has therefore used the force to Z, and if he has done this without Z's consent, intending or knowing it to be likely that he may thereby cause injury, fear or annoyance to Z, A has used criminal force. As we go on adding to the illustrations, A intentionally pulls up a woman's well. Now here A intentionally uses force to her, and if he does so without her consent, intending or knowing it to be likely that he may thereby injure, frighten or annoy her, he has used criminal force to her. You are going by road. Somebody stands in front of you and stops you, and he has asked for some address to you, inquires, and you tell him you do not know and start proceeding. Again he comes in front of you, stops and don't allow you to proceed, stops you and has asked the address second time. You say you do not know, you are new to that particular locality, and you start walking. Again he comes and stands in front of you third time. His intention may not be to commit an offense, it may not be to cause injury, it may not be to cause fear, but it is definitely to annoy. When somebody is riding on the horse, he is learning how to ride the horse, you take a stick and start beating the horse so that the horse should start galloping in tremendous speed. Naturally, the person who is riding the horse, it will definitely cause fear, and hence this is causing this intention. Intention is to commit an offense. If the intention is to cause injury, fear or annoyance, then naturally what we say, that constitutes liability for the offense of criminal force. A throws a stone. If A throws a stone, intending or knowing it to be likely that the stone will be thus brought into contact with Z or with Z's clothes or with something carried by Z, or that it will strike water, dash up the water against Z's clothes or something carried by Z, and if the throwing of the stone produces the effect of causing any substance to come into contact with Z or Z's clothes, or A has used force to Z, and hence what we say, he has committed the offense of criminal force as it is defined by section 350 of the Indian Penal Code. So now with this now, when first of all you have to understand what do you mean by force, and the force is defined as far as section 349 of the Indian Penal Code is concerned. Force is not at all an offense when it can be said that one person has used force with respect to another person, that we come to know. And then with this now, what do you mean by criminal force as it is defined by section 350 of the Indian Penal Code? Somebody is in white dress, he is walking, and there is a pond of dirty water by the side of the road. Now Mr. A is in white dress, Mr. B takes a stone, and what is that? he throws that stone into dirty water in such a manner that the dirty water sprinkles upon his white dress. Now, if you dispose of any substance in such a manner so as to bring that substance into contact with other's body, or with anything that other is wearing or carrying, or with anything so situated which affects the other's sense of feeling, this exactly happens in this case, and hence what we say, Mr. A has used a criminal force as it is, and hence committed the offence as it is defined by section 350 of the Indian Penal Code. With this now, I take you back to what, with the illustration with which we started discussing. A takes a stone, tells Mr. B, I will throw this stone. Gestures which are accompanied by the word, tells Mr. B that I am going to throw this stone, but he doesn't throw stone, but keeps it again back on the ground. What is his liability? And this is a case where we understand that his liability is for the offence of assault. But then, as once we understand what do you mean by force, then we understand what is meant by criminal force. Now this is the time for us to understand what do you mean by assault. By reading section 351, it says, whoever makes any gesture or any preparation, intending or knowing it to be likely that such gesture or preparation will cause any person present to apprehend that he who makes such gesture or preparation is about to use criminal force to that person, is said to commit an assault. So this is what is meant by assault. But if somebody merely stands like a statue and tells somebody, I will beat you, and if he has got he is just holding a stone without uttering the words, in a case where he merely stands like a statue and says, I will throw stone, or he takes a stone but doesn't utter the words, in both the cases he is not liable, because of the explanation we said. Mere words do not amount to an assault, but the words which a person uses may give to his gesture or preparation such a meaning as may make the gesture or preparation amount to an assault. So there is a present ability, that is one aspect. Secondly, physical presence of the offender at the scene of the offence. And thirdly, what it does when it falls short of criminal force. For example, if it falls short, but that causes, mind well, do read the ingredient very carefully. It says, will such gesture or preparation will cause any person present to apprehend that he who makes that gesture or preparation is about to use criminal force to that person, is said to commit an assault. So now, if somebody takes out revolver, points out revolver into direction of somebody and says, well, I will now pull trigger. Now this he may or he may not. As soon as this is done by him, gesture accompanied by words will constitute liability as for the offence of assault as defined by section 351. If A merely shakes his fist at Z, intending or knowing it to be likely that he may thereby cause Z to believe that he is about to strike Z, he may strike or he may not. But what is his liability? His liability is for the offence of assault defined by section 350. Mr. A is having a ferocious dog which is chained and he is on the road. Mr. B is coming from opposite direction. Mr. A begins to unloose the muzzle of a ferocious dog, and intending or knowing it to be likely that he may thereby cause Z to believe that he is about to cause the dog to attack Mr. Z, what A has done? A has committed an offence of assault. A takes up a stick, saying to Z, I will give you beating with the help of the stick, and then gives that stick again back. He is liable for the offence of assault as it is defined by section 351, because what it says, whoever as you start reading the section, whoever makes any gesture or any preparation, so one who makes gesture or preparation, as in case of holding a revolver, making a one who shakes his fist, or who has taken a stick and tells somebody that he will beat him with the help of the stick, or preparation begins to unloose the muzzle of a ferocious dog, unchaining the ferocious dog, inciting the dog to spring upon Mr. Spring upon. This is exactly it falls short of criminal force. And what is an assault? When it's solved, there is presentability, no doubt about it. Physical presence of the offender, no doubt about it. But what happens when it falls short of criminal force at the liability of an individual? So this is an offense which is required to be compared as there is express provision. What is the express provision? If there is a gesture or preparation on your part, and if that gesture or preparation will cause any person present to apprehend that he who makes a gesture or preparation is about to use criminal force, that will constitute liability for assault as defined by section 351 of the Indian Penal Code. Now with this, now as I mean we at times, I mean, when at the time of discussing the right of private defense, we may take into consideration some illustrations, no doubt about it, but otherwise I hope for the time being, this is what is in order to know the offense of assault, which is defined by section 351 of the Indian Penal Code, you must know the offense of criminal force, which is defined by section 350, and in order to know the offense of criminal force, which is defined as per section 350 of the Indian Penal Code is concerned, you must know force, which is defined. Force is not, I again repeat, force is not at all an offense when it can be said that one person has used force with respect to another person is defined by section 349. So in order to understand section 349, do read section 350 of the Indian Penal Code and the illustrations which are given, which will serve the purpose. With this now, I don't think it's necessary, but then if you read section 3, I mean as far as these sections are concerned, I may draw your attention to one section, namely section 354 of the Indian Penal Code, which deals with assault or criminal force with to woman with intent to outrage her modesty. This is one section with which we shall be dealing during course of our lecture. But we shall be dealing with this section only at the time of discussing, I mean, we will correlate the section. For example, we will try to understand what is rape, which is defined by section 375 of the Indian Penal Code. When it can be said that there was an attempt to commit rape and the person was unsuccessful, with which you are dealt, when you have to try to understand the importance of section 511 of the Indian Penal Code, with which we shall be dealing, no doubt about it. Then we will deal with section 3 when the person, for example, has not crossed the stage of preparation, he may be liable for criminal force or assault as it is defined by section 354 of the Indian Penal Code, and less severe punishment may be as far as section 509 of the Indian Penal Code is concerned, with which we shall be dealing during course of our lecture. With this now, as usual, instead of going through and reading the sections in detail, I will just read the heading of the sections which deal with punishment. Section 358 deals with assault or criminal force on grave provocation. What is the punishment? Assault or criminal force in attempt wrongfully to confine a person. Section 357. Assault or criminal force in attempt to commit theft of property carried by a person. Section 356. Section 355. Assault or criminal force with intent to dishonor person otherwise than on grave provocation. Section 354, that has been told as a criminal assault or criminal force to woman with intent to outrage her modesty. Section 353, assault or criminal force to deter public servant from discharge of his duty, that we have dealt. And then section 352, with which the punishment starts as far as this part of the topic is concerned, is punishment for assault or criminal force otherwise than on grave provocation, where the punishment is laid down as per section 352 of the Indian Penal Code is concerned. And this is the time where we go back to the illustration where A takes the stone, tells Mr. B that I will throw this stone into your direction, and then he throws that stone into direction of Mr. B, which results into bodily pain. What are the offenses that are committed by Mr. A? As this throwing of the stone results into bodily pain, this has got reference, and he intentionally does so. So this has got reference to what? A is liable for the offense of voluntarily causing hurt defined by section 321 of the Indian Penal Code. So that is his liability. Liability in the sense the offense. The punishment may be as per any one of the sections, right from section 323 onwards, to which I had made mention in the past. Yes, that is one thing. Secondly, as he had thrown stone, in order that stone should come into contact with other's body, as we are dealt with, or anything or with anything which that other is wearing or carrying, or with anything so situated which affects the other sense of feeling, as in case, for example, you he is going to take bath with the help of the lukewarm water, and you put a boiling water so that the boiling water should come in contact with his body. Yes, definitely. So similarly now here, as he has thrown stone into direction of Mr. B, he has also used the offense of criminal force as it is defined by section 350 of the Indian Penal Code. And when he tells somebody that I am going to throw this stone into a direction, his liability, this is also an offense of assault which is defined. I mean, he has gone through or passed, he is not merely shown the stone, but has actually thrown the stone. But the time at which he tells that when I am going to throw your stone into this direction, this is a gesture which is accompanied by what? Which apprehends the person that he is about to use a criminal force. The liability is for the offense of assault as it is defined by section 349 of the Indian Penal Code, and the rest of the as far as the offense of assault is concerned. During course of our lecture, as I told you, we shall be dealing with many more illustrations during course of time. But for the time being, this serves the purpose from the point of view of understanding the offense of assault, for which you must know the offense of criminal force, for which you must know what do you mean by force only, as which is not an offense as defined by section 349 of the Indian Penal Code. With this now, there are, from my point of view, we have to proceed to the next topic. And what is the next topic? As far as the next topic is concerned, we shall be dealing with kidnapping and abduction. Now, in order to understand, let me tell you, there is no separate definition of kidnapping which is given anywhere as far as Indian Penal Code is concerned. But if you read section 358, it says kidnapping is of two kinds: kidnapping from India and kidnapping from lawful guardianship. Kidnapping from India is defined by section 360. Kidnapping from lawful guardianship is defined by section 361 of the Indian Penal Code. And what do you mean by abduction is defined as far as section 362 of the Indian Penal Code is concerned. Right from section 363 onwards are the sections which deal with punishment. So now the next topic is to understand what is the distinction, or what do you mean by kidnapping. Literal meaning of the term kidnapping is child stealing, but then, as I told you, kidnapping is not an offense which is defined anywhere. It merely says kidnapping is of two types, a kidnapping is of two kinds, and then further part is of two kinds, and they say kidnapping from India and kidnapping from lawful guardianship, with which we shall be dealing, and then we will try to understand what do you mean by abduction. Mind well, when you read section 362 of the Indian Penal Code, you will come to know, as in case of force, abduction is not an offense. Abducting with a particular intent only is made punishable by the provisions of the Indian Penal Code, and hence this is the next topic as far as we have started discussing offences affecting human body, and now we shall proceed to next topic regarding kidnapping and abduction as far as next part of our lecture is concerned.